Tonight, Tuesday, October 14th, on Channel 2's magazine Faces and Places, Kev Riley reports that cardboard keeps them together. Mary Starrett meets an inventor helping the handicapped. Elaine Murphy visits the oldest tavern in Oregon.
Hawaiian.
And Ron tries talking with a human echo.
Not stump the echo.
Welcome to Faces and Places with Kev Riley, Elaine Murphy, Ron Carlson, and Mary Starrett.
Good evening, I'm Mary Starrett.
And I'm Ron Carlson. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Tonight on Faces and Places, the people you meet have something in common. They either like to make people laugh or make people smile.
We often have visitors here at Channel 2 who want to meet on-the-air personalities like Jim Bosley or Richard Ross. Most of our guests are easy to talk to, but there was one visitor who wouldn't let our staff speak for themselves. This is Ronnie Severson, John Kleiner.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Ron.
How are you?
John.
John. How are you?
How are you? I
I'm
thought
pretty
you
good.
said Ron.
No, I thought you said John.
I may have. Your job is what?
I'm the news director. No, you're the news director. That's right.
That's right. No, you said it first.
No,
you
you
did.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Well, it's certainly nice to see anybody come and visit us once in a while. Yeah.
I think I met you in Spokane once, a long time ago.
Yeah, you drove me crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yes. Well, I'm Ron Severson.
Pleased to meet you.
You really mean that, huh?
I really
do.
I don't know who you are.
Wait a minute. How is that? I don't follow you on what you were saying.
You must be the human echo.
It doesn't take most people long to figure out there's something resoundingly different about the man they call the human echo. For 55 years now, Ron Severson has been repeating people's words almost before they are spoken. After you speak with him, or is it after he speaks with you, the word reiteration takes on a new meaning.
I just found that as a conversation thing, it was really great. You know, people seem to enjoy it. A lot of people got upset. When I was younger, I wasn't as careful with it as I am now, because I know that it does embarrass some people.
It all started as a childhood gag in Fargo, North Dakota, but as Severson's words got around, he began to make money at it, first in Hollywood, then on the road with Bob Hope. Now the 65-year-old safe and lock salesman uses his repetitive rhetoric on the speaking circuit.
And it's a good party fun thing.
Beats the lampshade on the head.
Yeah, you better believe it, yeah.
But some people who couldn't believe it included some of Channel 2's fastest talkers.
They told you a little about me, did they? I'm waiting.
I am too.
What did they tell? I'm always curious of how they explain me.
They just said
it.
The echo man was coming. You're fantastic.
Did this make any sense to you then?
Yeah.
Yeah. In what respect? I mean,
I just couldn't believe it. Brother Andy, where are you?
This is
This
who?
is who? I'm Ron Severson.
Hi, I'm Jim Bosley.
Jim Bosley.
That's
right.
right. It's here in one of these places. It's in my wallet. I just got a letter this morning.
How about that?
How about that?
People
I didn't
do
say
that.
I don't ever say that. You know, I'm the weatherman. I'm the weatherman here. He even pronounces the words I mispronounce.
I do this entirely by sound. In other words, I would rather not look at some people, because some people, their lips are so expressive that you can almost see what they're going to say. And I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just relax and just listen to what they're saying and then repeat it. And I really don't know what I'm saying until I hear myself say it.
You know the longest word in the language?
Not
the
necessarily the
longest
word in the English language.
We discovered it the other day in connection with a volcano. Yeah, and it's pneumono-ultramicroscopic volcanoconiosis.
He's got it. And you haven't heard make that reheard anything yet. Even though Severson isn't a linguist, he can still echo foreign languages and accents in a fraction of a second. Reporter Jim Hyde tried French.
Je m'appelle Jim Hyde, je suis un journaliste au télévision 2.
Go. I hope you're keeping it clean, because I don't understand a word you said. You know?
Mary tried her Brooklyn accent.
Well, let me start talking. Okay, see, I was born on 33rd Street and 30th Avenue in Brooklyn. And every night I used to go out and walk the dog. Sometimes I used to get in my car and drive around. Drive around the street, I used to go to the store. But sometimes, most of the time, I used to just take the dog out and walk to the park, walk across the street all around. Because that's where I'm from. I'm from Brooklyn. My name's Mary Stower. Very nice to meet you.
And at Severson's speaking engagement, Portland Commercial Club members tried Spanish.
I think that's tremendous.
And Swedish.
Sverige från en liten plats som heter Lerum. Jag kom till Amerika 1963 och jag har varit hemma ett par gånger.
But they couldn't stump the man who says his hearing, listen to this, is 8 times stronger than average.
Ronnie, have you ever been stumped by anyone?
Gypsies and Filipinos seem to be so much on the ball that it doesn't bother them. And if they want to talk fast enough, they seem to be able to, I can't keep up with them.
But he was able to keep up with everyone he met in Portland, and his visit here produced the traditional responses, from those who shook their heads and laughed, to those who just couldn't let Severson leave town without trying to stump him with just one more song.
Tahahuala, tahahuala.
Tahahuala, tahahuala. He's not bad. He's fairly close.
Thanks, Jim.
How does he do that?
How does he do that? You've been practicing. Still to come on Faces and Places, Elaine Murphy stops by one of Oregon's oldest roadhouses. Although the Northwest is rich in history, people often drive past landmarks without a second glance. But when Elaine Murphy saw a sign for Oregon's oldest tavern, she just couldn't pass it by.
Oregon in 1860, this road was big news. The first overland link between Portland and Sacramento. Stagecoaches raced the distance in only 6 days, and in between, establishments like the Wolf Creek Tavern sprang up. The tavern was an oasis in a dry, dusty trail, a place where drivers and horses were changed, and the weary traveler could count on finding a good hot meal and a soft pillow to rest his head. Though the stagecoaches are long gone and I-5 has bypassed Wolf Creek, the tavern is still open to the tired, the hungry, and the just plain curious. Today, Wolf Creek Tavern is owned by the Oregon State Parks and Recreation Division, but it has leased the inn to people who run it in the old tradition. It's kind of fun to have a look around the restored landmark, trying to imagine the days when stagecoach drivers propped their feet up on the hearth in the men's sitting room, and evenings when the women gathered for music and embroidery in the ladies' parlor. Though many of the rooms have been enlarged over the years, some remain in the same closet size they were in the 1880s. This room may not look like much, but it was here that author Jack London slept and worked on one of his short stories. If only the walls could talk. Can you imagine what kind of stories they would tell? Oh, we don't have to wish for such miracles as talking walls when we still have people like the Dougals who love to tell stories about the people, famous and not so famous, who slept in these beds. We ran into the Dougals in Beaverton, Oregon, where they have retired, but they once lived at Wolf Creek and gave the tavern a reputation for fine dining and hospitality. This is what Wolf Creek looked like when John Dougal purchased it in 1922. He was fresh out of the service and fell in love with the broken-down relic. But it took the bachelor a year of running it alone before he finally gave in and asked for help.
Well, I had trouble getting a chambermaid, so after I'd been running it for a year, why, I went to Portland and got her, married her, and brought her
As
back.
I told you, I always tell him he needed a chambermaid. That's the only reason he married me.
As for the famous people who visited the Dougals at Wolf Creek Tavern, well, when John was young, he babysat movie actress Carol Lombard and loves to tell the story.
She came to visit me with her husband, Clark Gable. And that one reason was that when the wife and I went on our honeymoon, we stopped with them when they lived where they lived in Hollywood, so she wanted to return the visit to Wolf Creek.
But it wasn't only movie stars that took repast at the inn.
Well, Herbert Hoover came to look at some gold mines, and then he found out that it wasn't far from Rogue River where steelhead fishing would be very good. So after he went to the gold mines that I had directed him to, why, he said, well, now I've seen all I want to see, let's go fishing. So I took him down to Everett and Riffle on the Rogue River to
Did you catch anything?
We caught lots of fish.
Wolf Creek entertained many visitors. It was right on the main highway and just about a full day's travel from Portland. But the Dougals say when they first bought the place, there was no such thing as a no vacancy sign.
When we first took over the tavern, the people who had been accustomed to staying there wouldn't come in and say they wanted to register for a room. They'd look on the mantel and see if there was any candlesticks up there. And if there was a candlestick there, they knew there was a vacant room. So they'd take the candle and go upstairs and knock on all the room doors until they found one that they didn't get an answer, and then they'd go in and stay all night.
Did they ever walk in on you?
Oh, yeah.
Under the Dougals' management, Wolf Creek became so popular that in 1927, John had to add an extra wing. The tavern began to have an expanded role, not just as a wayside inn, but in the days when pilots first started speeding mail service by air, this became an official weather station. And since Wolf Creek Tavern had the only phone in the area, the state police used it as their wayside exchange, a place where they could receive orders and relay reports. Wolf Creek also meant a lot to big business. It was here that Isidore Zellerback held his company's secret board meetings because he could rent the entire inn and no company spies could eavesdrop. But of all the stories the Dougals tell, perhaps this is the most surprising.
There was never any liquor sold in the Wolf Creek Tavern. The person who established religion in the area and this church at Golden and so forth, put it in the deed that if any liquor was ever sold there, it would revert to the previous owner.
When is a tavern not a tavern? When it's Wolf Creek. Stagecoach Inn, weather station, police exchange, home of hospitality, and part of Oregon's history.
Ronnie Lane tells us that the people in Wolf Creek, Oregon extended some of that old-fashioned hospitality to the Faces and Places group.
Sounds like she had a great time down there. And in case you're wondering where Wolf Creek is located, it's in southern Oregon, just north of Grants Pass. Next up on Faces and Places, Mary will tell us about some helpful inventions.
If you or your friends know about unusual faces and places in Oregon and Southwest Washington, you're invited to submit story ideas to Faces and Places, Post Office Box 8799, Portland, Oregon 97208. If your story is used on the air, we'll send you, with our compliments, a Faces and Places t-shirt. That's Faces and Places, Post Office Box 8799, Portland, Oregon 97208.
Back when the telephone was invented, few would have thought improvement on that wonderful new device was possible. The phone was beginning of a whole new way of communicating and socializing. But to John Dannenman, the phone was meant to be improved on.
Brookie, can you sing a song? All the children of the Lord, where they know black and white, and your precious in the sight. Jesus, that's the little children of the Lord. That's very pretty. Where did you learn that? From my school.
Not all little children are as enthusiastic and responsive as Brooke. Recognizing that, the man behind the talking bear devised this furry wonder to get across to autistic and mentally retarded children. Now, professionals use this method when all else fails. But talking bears aren't all this telephone company designer comes up with. Telephone Pioneers President John Dannenman's making Alexander Graham Bell proud. John's making the telephone accessible to the handicapped, from arthritics to amputees. To John, a phone is an important link to the outside world, especially for the less fortunate.
We've developed a device for a person with arthritic problems in their hands so that if they can't grab the telephone, at least they could pick it up and hold it in the palm of their hand and set it back down again.
Another of Danneman's inventions is a light probe for the blind.
And what they do is allow a blind person now to become a receptionist or an operator at a PBX or a switchboard.
Turning the same principle around to help the deaf, John's devised a sound probe for the deaf.
Now, a deaf person can look at that light and can see dial tone, and he can see dialing, and by watching the changes in lights, identify the fact that somebody is talking on the other end, so they've reached somebody.
Dialing a phone seems so simple, unless you're handicapped. But a simple conversion to a touch-o-matic pre-programmed phone helps the elderly, paraplegics, and the vision impaired.
For instance, an older lady, and you want her to have this for a safety device. With this on here, you say, Mom, just dial 1. And she can push the 1, and that dials your home. If she can't remember, it gives you an opportunity to use, to get away from trying to remember numbers, to trying to see how to dial on a dial telephone, this type of thing. A very handy device. And of course, the last 2 buttons down here, F for fire and P for police.
John Danneman's dedicated to making phone communication accessible to all. He's even working on a phone adapter for quadriplegics.
What we've done is taken a standard speakerphone and arranged it so they simply can push a button or move their head or twitch a muscle. In fact, there are some devices we've heard of where actually the eyeball moving will cause it to trigger.
This pioneer's been at this sort of work for the better part of 20 years. Sometimes John Danneman never meets the people he's helped. John's work is to reach out and touch someone.
And that cute little 4-year-old is none other than Brooke Carlson, Ron's little girl. Is she going to follow in your footsteps, being in the business?
Hard to tell. She's been quite a little gift, though. She made her Sunday school teacher pretty proud remembering her song there.
Coming up on Faces and Places, Kev Riley travels to Eugene to visit a very special scout troop. Northwesterners lead the nation in the amount of things recycled. But Kev Riley's found an Oregon man who's been recycling paper for profit since before many of us were born.
People in Eugene have gotten used to seeing 60-year-old Stuart Place rummaging through trash bins behind local stores. He's a retired mail handler who scavenges the alleyways most evenings, looking for recyclable paper and cardboard that can be turned into cash. But the money's not for him, it's for his Boy Scout troop, a most unusual Boy Scout troop. Its members are mentally retarded.
To them, scouting is what your job is to you. It's something they can do. They're accomplishing something in the world.
Stu founded the troop, and now Bill Hutchins helps him out as scoutmaster during the troop's Monday night meetings upstairs at the Eagles Lodge. During the day, you'll find Stu downstairs at the lodge, bundling the newspapers he's collected, and papers dropped off at the Eagles Lodge by people who want to help him support his scouts. The troop's members come from needy families who can't afford scouting activities.
Our one major one last year was taking the boys to Disneyland. And we had a week at Disneyland, and that cost about $2,000.
That's a lot of money, and nobody knows that better than Stu, who raises most of it through recycling, an activity familiar to scouts like him.
We were one of the first ecology-minded groups, and even during World War I, this was a big thing, and we've always taught it, so why not practice it?
Stu literally practices what he preaches. In his youth, he trained to be a Methodist missionary, hoping to travel to China, but he suffered some heart trouble that killed that dream.
Well, you never got to China as a missionary, but in a way, you're a missionary here in Oregon, aren't you?
Well, if you call just being an interested human in other people, yes. If you feel in order to be a missionary, you've got to pound on the Bible and bore people, no.
He really believes in helping his fellow man. He and his wife founded Goodwill Industries in Eugene, and they helped start the Eugene Mission. But having experienced firsthand the joys of scouting, starting as a Cub Scout 50 years ago, Stu wanted to open scouting to those less fortunate than he.
The one boy that was the real problem was the pyromaniac. He had more fun building the fires at camp than anybody I know.
He began his first scout troop for the mentally retarded back in 1937, when the retarded were known by a different name.
I organized a Boy Scout troop in the state school for the feeble-minded at Grafton, North Dakota. And it's still going back there.
And Stu's still going, spending his days and nights nosing around for newspapers and collecting cardboard till he's exhausted.
Stu tries not to work too hard because of his heart condition. Back in 1940, he says, I went to the doctor and he told me I had 6 months to live. And the other day, says Stu, I went to the doctor and he told me I had a year to live. Guess I'm improving. What kind of satisfaction or enjoyment is there in it for you?
Oh, when a kid smiles at you, that's a payday. When a dad comes up and says, if it hadn't been for you and your interest in scouting, my boy wouldn't have learned to read. But he had to learn to read to be able to pass the tests, and the scout book caused him to learn to read. It forced him one. We couldn't get to him any other way.
Stuart Place is a very rich man in the love he receives as pay for being scoutmaster to these retarded young men. So if you ever see him rummaging through a garbage dumpster in Eugene, don't mistake him for a bum looking for his next meal. He's just a generous man with a big heart, scrounging a few bucks for his boys.
Looks like those newspapers have brought a lot of love and happiness to those boys.
They sure have. There finally is some good use for yesterday's news. Here's a look at what's coming up tomorrow night on Faces and Places.
Kev Riley is computerized, computerized, computerized. Mary Starrett combs the beach for treasure. Elaine Murphy is down on the farm auction. And Ron Carlson gets put through the ringer.
That's our show for this evening. We hope you enjoyed it.
Just a reminder, To Tell the Truth is coming up next. Have a good evening and a good day tomorrow, and we'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
Good night.